Now this right here is the Olive video editor. Specifically, it's Olive 0.1.2. Now, I had originally wanted to do this video using Olive 0.2, which is the latest version of it. It's still an alpha, but it is the latest version. The problem is, though, that it's had a pretty bad bug for, I'd say, about a year or so, where it has a very bad memory leak, and if I try to render above a 10-minute video, it will use 32 gigs of RAM, and once it's used up all of my RAM, it freezes and dies. So instead, we're using 0.1.2. Now, it is very much alpha software, so I will be excusing some of the mistakes, unlike in something like Blender, but even so, even with it being alpha software, this is probably the best video editor I've tried so far. I honestly think this might be better than Kdenlive, and you're going to see why throughout the course of this video. Now, when it comes to timeline handling, this does it almost perfectly. There are only a couple of little things I'd want to see changed, so let me just go and put a bunch of stuff right here. So let's go move that one down, we'll put that one down and that one there, we'll put that one up here, and as you're going to see, I can scrub through this, and it doesn't care. It's just working perfectly fine. I can play this, basically no lag. I don't know what it's doing in the background, but even something like Kdenlive, when I have this many tracks going on at the same time, would have started to lag. And what makes it even crazier is I can be playing the video, and I can modify what's happening in the video while it's playing, and it just keeps playing. I can move stuff around, I can do whatever I want, and it has no trouble whatsoever going and dealing with this. I don't know how it's doing that, I don't know what it's doing, but it's awesome. Also, when it comes to creating new tracks, it does it so well and so seamlessly. All we have to do is, let's say we want a new video track, so let's go and grab this one here, and then drag it and drop it. We don't have to press any special key, it just does it for us. So let's say we want this bit here under here. So let's go and move this audio track to the one below it, drag this across, and there we go. That's all we have to do. And then if we want to go and get rid of this video track, all we have to do is grab it, drag it, and it's deleted it. Honestly, going to something that doesn't let me do this will feel like such a massive downgrade. I would say the only problem the track handling does have is if we go and say move this track up here, it's not actually going to move the audio track. So if I try to say drag it to the right, as you're going to see, it's going to overlap on this audio and delete all of the audio that was in the way. In the case of Kdenlive, if I was to do this, it would also drag the audio track down as well to make sure they're, I guess, on like equivalent audio and video tracks. It's not a major problem. All you have to do is make sure you drag the video track and drag the audio track, but it would be nice to see an option to do both at the same time. Even though I probably shouldn't need to mention this, you can go and move multiple tracks at the same time, and it does work perfectly fine. So if I go and say select all of these, you just click and drag like you'd expect to see. We can go and drag these as much as we want. We can move them between tracks, and then if we go and undo it, it will undo all of those movements, and it's not going to add in any weird behavior. I'm talking to you, Flowblade. Now, one of the things I hate about a video editor is one that doesn't have a plain text project file. Luckily, Olive, not one of those applications. So this one stores its project file in XML. So let's go and open up this one here and open this up in my editor. This makes it very easy to go and update my Python script to extract out the YouTube chapter markers, and that's what I've actually gone and done. So if you've noticed that in a couple of videos, those have been there recently, that's exactly why. Now, in my Blender video, I made a slight mistake, and I said that Blender was the only video editor that had a sensible text tool. Turns out, Olive does as well. So if we go and click this plus down here, click on title, and then drag a section, we want the title, click on the title. Now we can go and edit all of the properties about it. So we can go and change like the shadow color, the shadow angle, things like that. But generally what you're going to want to do is just modify the text. So let's go and click edit text in here, change this from sample text to this is some text. Let's go and make the font bigger. Let's make the font, let's go bold. Let's change it to, I don't know, JetBrains Mono. And go into the color. Change this up so we can actually see the color. Let's make the color, I don't know, green, for example. Press OK. And now we have some text. We didn't have to go and save the file anywhere. We can go and edit this as we want. we can actually go and keyframe everything as well. So we can actually go and fade the text between different colors. So that leads us perfectly into effects. So one thing you might have noticed earlier is I was modifying the size of the video. Now, I didn't actually go and add that transform element to the video. Every single video clip by default has a transform element on it. So if you want to go and modify that, all you need to do is go and click on the video clip, go to the effects tab, and all of the effects you can modify will be listed there. So if it has an audio clip, it will also have the audio listed there as well. So we can go and say modify the scale with this, and it does what a scale modification does. We can change the position, basically everything you'd expect to see here. Now, this section off to the right-hand side here shows all of our keyframes, and this red line in here actually synchronizes with the red line in our timeline, so it's very easy to do things like, say, find the exact start of a clip or the exact end of a clip and add a keyframe there. But let's go and add a keyframe after that point. So let's say we want to keyframe the scale. The way we do that is go click on the clock symbol next to the property. So let's go and add this one here, and that adds the starting one. And if we scroll along, there we go. Now we can see the keyframe in here, and let's go and add a keyframe a bit further along. Let's say we want one here as well. And then what we're going to do is at the ending keyframe, we're going to increase the scale. Let's go to 200. And now if we go and play the clip between these 2 points, it's going to go and modify the scale as it actually goes through the keyframes. And there are other effects we can add as well. So on the right hand side here, we have the video transitions. Right now there's just cross dissolve. I presume in 0.2 more video transitions will be added, but on the left hand side we have the video effects. We have things like blur, color, distort, Freya. I'm not sure what this is, but there's a lot of effects in here. We have keying, which gives you things like chroma key. We have render and stylize. Let's go and add a stylize. Let's go and add a pixelate, for example. And let's go and keyframe this one. So as we'll notice, we have the pixelate in the list of effects right here. So we can go and add a keyframe for this one, a keyframe for this one, and move along, add a keyframe for this one, keyframe for this one. And then let's change the horizontal pixels. Let's increase this one to that, and increase this one as well. And if we go and play this now, as we'll see, it's going to go and modify how much it's actually being pixelated by. Now, I find it genuinely surprising how many effects are actually here, because Olive isn't actually an MLT-based video editor. So MLT is the Media Lovin' Toolkit, and it's the basis for most of the video editors on Linux, and especially Kdenlive. I think this is part of the reason why Olive doesn't actually have the same performance difficulties, because MLT has serious problems doing multi-threading, but by not being an MLT-based video editor, you don't get all of that same level of support. So the fact that these effects are here means a lot of work has been done on this. Now, I think one of the coolest things here is we can actually go and save all of the keyframes and all of the properties we've set to a file, and then afterwards, we can actually go and load that in. I've gone and tested this before, and it works perfectly. It loads everything it's supposed to load. While I would like a way to actually just save presets in the application, that is a pretty good alternative for the time being. Now, even though Blender really did suffer in the timeline department by not being MLT based, it really shined during rendering, and the same is true for Olive as well. So while there aren't that many options we can go and set, so to go and bring this menu up, all we do is press Ctrl M, or there's a export button in the file menu. The render times are absolutely amazing. So there's a couple of things you sort of have to work out. Firstly is the quality CRF. Setting this to 36, don't do that. Your video is going to look absolutely awful. Just set this number lower. Now, luckily, there is a tooltip that does go and basically explain it. What I found is that anything 15 or lower is basically lossless, and there's no point really going any lower unless you actually need it to be lossless. In that case, set it down to 0. But for YouTube, because YouTube's going to compress it anyway, 15's perfectly fine. Besides that, there's not really that much else you want to set. Everything else is just configured as it should be. If you want to have 60 FPS video, obviously set this to 60. If you're working in something that's not 1080p, obviously change these as well. Now, one thing that won't work out of the box is doing things with transparent backgrounds. So say you want to have like a video overlay. The way you're going to do that in Olive is you're going to change the format from MPEG-4 over to QuickTime MOV, then change the codec from libx264 over to the QuickTime animation, and then you need to change the advanced settings and change this to ARGB, and then that's going to work. So if you've noticed that in a couple of my videos, I've had this little overlay at the start of my videos, I basically made this inside of Olive just to test out how the effects work, and it works quite well. The only problem with the export menu, as you can see right here, is it resets it every single time you open it. Even if it's in the same instance of running Olive, it resets all of your settings. So if you're working with basically the default settings, it's fine. If you want to do, say, 4K video, it is going to be a little bit tedious every single time. Now, I don't know what exactly is causing this issue, but I've noticed that occasionally the undo hotkey will just stop working. And the only way I've noticed to actually go and fix it is to go into the undo menu and then click on undo. And from that point, the hotkey will just keep working fine. I'm guessing there's something wrong with like the way it's actually handling the undo history, and maybe the hotkey is accessing the history slightly differently, but it's not really that major a problem and only happens like once every couple of videos I'm working on. Now, something that does happen more frequently is a problem with cutting videos. So let's say I have this section right here selected and I cut a video, let's say like right here, for example, and I realize I don't actually want the cut there, I want the cut somewhere else. So if I go and undo that, you might expect the entire clip to be highlighted or none of the clip to be highlighted. However, only the first half of it is highlighted and the second half isn't. And if I don't go and unselect that bit and I try to make a cut, it's going to actually go and cut on that point. Now, I don't know why it cuts at that specific point, because if we regularly have a video highlighted, it can cut anywhere along that video. It must just be a weird way the undos are being handled. One very minor issue I've noticed is that it seems like when the timeline is moving and the audio is playing, the timeline head is slightly out of sync with the audio, because the timeline head will be on a section where there's absolutely no waveform being shown and I'm still hearing audio. So I don't know if that's just a problem with audio chain, a problem with Pulse Audio, or a problem specifically with this application, but I've never heard it with any other video editor, so I sort of have to assume it's a problem with Olive. It's not a major deal, it does just make cutting audio clips based on the waveform just a tad bit harder. You may have spotted all of these little green markers here. These are actually what I use to parse out the YouTube chapters, and they work pretty well most of the time. We can actually go and make a marker for the timeline. So let's say this is a marker, but we can also make a marker for a video clip as well. So if we say select this video clip and press M, make this is a marker. On the actual video clip itself, there's a marker there as well. I don't typically use these ones, but maybe if you're like, I don't know, editing some really long project, that might actually be useful. The markers have a little bit of a problem though. So if we go and hover over the marker, say we try to click on it, maybe if we try to go and modify it, we can't actually see the name. Now the name is being set just fine, but there's no way to see it inside of the application. And your only choice if you want to go and modify it is to just completely rewrite the name with no indication of what the marker was supposed to be. But having decently working markers is better than nothing. Now, there's a bit of an interesting history with the Olive project. So Olive was never actually intended to be a good video editor, let alone a popular video editor. It was actually intended for the developer to learn C++. And a couple of people found it while Kdenlive was really, really broken. They praised it, it became pretty popular, and then the dev realized that he can actually go and make a proper video editor from this. So Olive 0.1 is very hacked together. And this is part of the reason why 0.2 is going to be a complete rewrite from the ground up. And from what I've tested outside of the memory leaks, 0.2 looks really, really good. So once that problem is dealt with, I'm going to be doing a video on that editor as well. But as for what works right now, I think next time I'm going to try maybe OpenShot. I don't know how much it's changed in the past 2 years, but hopefully it has some new features in it. So at the start of this video, I mentioned that I really do like Olive, and I'm thinking that going forward, whenever I use something that isn't one of the video editors I'm testing, it's probably going to be Olive, because it does basically everything I need it to do, It might be alpha software, but it hasn't really crashed on me that much. Maybe like once or twice over the past 2 weeks I've been using it, and that's perfectly fine because Kdenlive crashed way more often than that. So I think that's going to be pretty much everything for me, but before I go, I would like to thank my supporters, so a special thank you to Chris, Joachim, Donald, Michael, Andre, Nathan, David Monster, Will, Brennan, Chica Bento, Jamie, Joseph, Mitchell, Peter D, Stephen, Tony Tushar, and all of my $2 supporters. If you'd like to go support my work, there are links down below to all of my things like LibrePay, Subscribestar, Patreon, all of that. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available basically anywhere, and then this channel is available on Odyssey, Library, and BitChute if you want to watch on a platform that isn't YouTube. So I think that's going to be pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.